Brilliant. So welcome to this second session, the second Ghatika Monthly on cultivating equanimity and impartiality. And I thought we'll get started with a little guided reflection. Can you all see that? Okay. So I just want to invite you to let your attention roam freely over these images and really see if you're feeling drawn to some, maybe more than others, and also observe what's coming up in your mind in the mode that you apprehend these images, any feelings that are coming up. And what I mean by feelings is really that distinction between pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. And also observe if there are any emotions that you can detect as you're watching these images, as you attend to them. And I invite you to now arouse an equal sense of caring for all these beings on the screen, attending to not just the images, but the people behind the images, the people that these images refer to. And see what comes up. So this is just to get warmed up with a very tiny reflection on partiality, impartiality, and we can discuss these after our meditation when we do our exploration. So hold any thoughts, anything that came up, and we can discuss it later. So what I thought we will do today is, first of all, I want to introduce you to what equanimity or impartiality, these are two common translations, what that is and why we should practice it. Then we'll talk about equanimity as an antidote to bias. And I want to also share the neuroscience of partiality with you to give a different perspective on the topic. And then we'll do a guided meditation with a recording from Lama Allen. And then there will be time to share and explore what's coming up for you, how you experience this practice, any other reflections that you'd like to share. And then we'll end with some ideas on how to apply and integrate this practice into our daily lives, which I think is where what it's all about. So what is equanimity or impartiality? So it's really an equal sense of caring. And I like this quote by Lama Allen, which is, it's a way of attending to others that involves neither attachment to those who are near, nor aversion to anyone who might impede our happiness. So what we're talking about is not indifference, but an equal sense of caring for everyone. So why should we practice that? Well, there are lots of advantages to practicing equanimity or impartiality. First of all, it helps us cultivate a greater sense of empathy and compassion. It helps us with our relationships, at least from our side. It really can help improve the relationship, and it will have repercussions on how others see us as well if we treat them with greater impartiality. It will lead to greater fairness and equity, both on an individual level, but also on a bigger societal level. Imagine if everyone was practicing equanimity and impartiality, where would we be then as a society? And in the workplace, which is where a lot of my work is, it's all about embracing diversity and inclusion. And I think what companies often miss is that, we need to cultivate that from the bottom up. And that's where impartiality and equanimity really come into play. And I think it's something that companies miss, which is why I'm so passionate about bringing it to the workplace. And it's a way of mitigating unconscious bias, which we will talk about today as well. Again, very relevant in the workplace and in society at large as well. And last but not least, it's an absolute foundational part of for any spiritual path. I don't think we can get anywhere on any spiritual path of whatever variety without cultivating a sense of equanimity and impartiality. So it's absolutely vital. And I think to understand and appreciate why equanimity is so important is to see that it's completely diametrically opposed to the way we view others by default. Our habitual ways of perceiving others, of relating to others, is to categorize them in three different ways. First, the people that we like because they give us pleasure, in whatever shape or form that will come. The people we don't like because they give us displeasure. And then the vast majority of people that we don't care about because they don't do either of these things. And so that's our default. And so you can see that equanimity and impartiality really run counter to the way we normally do things. And to put that in a more contemporary context, it's all about unconscious bias. And the bias, I mean, there are many different biases, but the one that we are talking about here is really what's been called similarity bias or affinity bias. And it's this tendency to categorize people into either our in-group or our out-group, because that third category of people we don't really care about much doesn't really seem to be that important to us naturally. So we categorize people, and we scan our environment, according to neuroscientists, up to 5 times a second, apparently, to be able to categorize people in that way. And that happens on a very subconscious level, unintentional. It's not about prejudice or conscious thinking. It's about the automatic processes that happen in our mind and in our brain that make us create these categories. So if you think about going to a party, for example, where you don't know anyone at all, what is happening under the surface is that we are scanning everyone we meet implicitly, automatically, and putting them in either the in-group or the out-group. And if people are in the out-group, that can lead to a sort of implicit threat response, and people in the in-group that we feel that we have something in common with, we feel a sense of reward and pleasure. And these categorizations really happen on many different bases, depending on the kind of groups or identities we want to identify with and we care about. So it could be race, it could be age, it could be education, social status, gender, sexual identity, sexual orientation, or religious affiliation. And of course, there are many more. And that's really the basis. And it's based on a kind of implicit assumption that people like me are better than others. And therefore, I care about people like me more than I care about people that are different. So, and the consequences are severe on many different levels. It leads to a distorted perception where we either over or underappreciate others. Don't see them for what they are. It leads to extreme partiality in our attitude, our behavior, our motivation to help others, for example, or really help others and treat them better or not. It leads to restrictions to empathy and compassion if we're biased. So we have less empathy and compassion for people who are in our out group. To stereotyping, prejudice, which is that more conscious way of a conscious process than bias, inequality, and discrimination, and it can even lead to abuse. So the consequences are really severe. And so I just wanted to share with you an insight from a particular neuroimaging study that was done, and where they looked at how it's different when we imagine a loved one versus someone who's a stranger, an unfamiliar individual being in a painful situation. And what they found is that different parts of the pain network are activated when we are imagining a loved one being in distress versus a stranger. With a loved one, it's different brain regions that are implicated in processing that information, which are correlated with affective empathy, which is that ability to resonate on an emotional level with others, versus the networks for cognitive empathy when we are thinking of a stranger. And that cognitive empathy is really about a more conscious and more cognitive, as the word suggests, ability to imagine and understand theoretically the pain of others. So it really it's processed in a different way and by different networks in the brain. So that I think is quite interesting, that there is a difference in the brain and how we process the partiality that we're experiencing. So in that way, when we look at impartiality, it's really an antidote to unconscious bias. And it's based on the insight, the truth, the fundamental truth that every sentient being is equally worthy of finding happiness and freedom from suffering. That's what we all want. And when we embrace that truth, then we can work to overcome bias from the inside out, from the bottom up. And I think that's what we need to do to shift bias, to really mitigate bias. So before we go into the meditation, just to mention briefly, the impartiality is one of the so-called four immeasurables, the others being loving kindness, compassion, empathetic joy. And I think the relationship is really that it's a mutual reciprocal relationship. And I think impartiality is really at the heart of the other three immeasurables. We cultivate loving kindness, that wish, the aspiration for others to be free, to find happiness and the causes of happiness on the basis of impartiality. We wish that for everyone. Equally, we wish compassion for everyone, that freedom from suffering, and also empathetic joy. We rejoice in others' joy. We wish others joy, on the basis that it's boundless. We don't make any, we don't create any boundaries. And at the same time, by practicing loving kindness, compassion, and empathetic joy, we are also implicitly cultivating impartiality, because it is transcending these boundaries. So it's all mutually reinforcing. So, and before we go to the meditation, I just want to mention how to cultivate it and what to do when it goes wrong. So the catalyst for cultivating impartiality is really to take responsibility for one's own deeds of body, speech, and mind, really owning that and taking that to heart. And on that basis, we can then cultivate impartiality, which will lead, if we're being successful, if we're making progress, it will gradually lead to attachment and aversion, or we can call it unconscious bias, to subside. And it can go wrong, however, if instead of cultivating this even-handed, boundless equanimity towards everyone, we fall into aloof indifference, which is really, which might look at first glance like impartiality, but it's really not. And if we do fall into aloof indifference and we just have an equal sense of not caring rather than caring, then the way to remedy that is to cultivate compassion. And so that's what we need to do. So there is a logic there that we can consciously work with, and it can help us to achieve greater impartiality. And yeah, the way to do it really is to practice. So can I ask Courtney now to share the guided meditation with us?
Yes.
Thank you.
There will be some silence at the beginning. Did you want to comment on that at all, Clara?
Yeah. So there is a little bit of silence at the beginning, and so just use that opportunity to fully arrive at the present moment, to settle your body, your speech, your mind in the present moment. So just use that opportunity to ground yourself, and then the guidance will begin.
Here we go.
Settle the body in its natural state, the respiration and its natural rhythm. To help stabilize the mind and make it serviceable, you may find it helpful to count 21 breaths, or simply quietly be mindful of the breathing. Now let's turn to the final of the four immeasurables, the cultivation of equanimity or impartiality, which implies an even sense of caring about others, not an indifference, but an evenness as the loving kindness, compassion, our caring for others flows out. Let's bring to mind first of all a person whom we may know quite well, but about whom we have no strong feelings one way or another, neither of attachment or of aversion. So if this person were to move far away, or if we are never to see this person again, it would really not bring any sadness. On the other hand, if this person entered our life much more fully, we see them much more frequently, that would not give us any special pleasure. Bring such a person vividly to mind, preferably one whom you know well. And allow that sense of indifference, of neutrality to arise. No sense of pleasure or discomfort arises when bringing this person to mind or encountering the person in person. But now bring the awareness to the reality that the nature of this relationship at this point is one that is transient. Over time, this person could become a very dear friend. We could forget about the person altogether. It's conceivable this person might turn into an enemy. Relationships, people, are always in a state of flux. Mental afflictions come and go. Behavior comes and goes. But in the midst of all of this, there is something that is constant, an ongoing flow, and that is this person, like ourselves, constantly wishes to be happy, wishes to be free of suffering, has his or her own hopes and fears. Imagine, if you will, this dimension of pristine awareness, once again symbolically represented as an orb of radiant white light, inexhaustible light of caring, utterly pure. This orb of light at your heart, and with each out-breath, send out your aspiration of loving kindness. May you, like myself, find the happiness that you seek. May you follow the path to that happiness. And as you breathe out, imagine this light from your heart flowing forth, embracing, suffusing this person, enveloping this person in a field of loving kindness, a field of joy. With each out-breath, may you find the happiness you seek. And this person, like ourselves, experiences physical pain, mental distress, is still under the influence of mental afflictions that lie at the root of suffering. With each in-breath, arouse his heart of compassion. May you, like myself, be free of suffering and the causes of suffering, and imagine the darkness of this person's suffering and its causes being drawn right into this orb of light at your heart, where it is extinguished without trace. With each out-breath, breathe out the light of loving kindness and imagine this person finding the joy, the fulfillment that he or she seeks. And with each in-breath, imagine drawing in the darkness of this person's suffering. With this yearning of compassion, may you be free of suffering and its causes. And with each in-breath, imagine the suffering and its causes dissipating. Imagine this person becoming free. Now let the appearance of this person dissolve back into the space of your mind. And bring to mind a person for whom you do feel strong attachment. That is, if should you never see this person again, for any reason, this would be very distressing. You may perhaps feel there's a great hole in your life, something incomplete, a deep sense of sadness. Bring such a person vividly to mind. And bring to mind the qualities of this person, the nature of the relationship that tends to arouse such strong attachment, why this person is so important to us, feeling so integral to our own well-being. Now once again bring the wisdom of understanding to this relationship. This person isn't constantly in a state of flux, and so is each of us. Relationships are constantly in a process of change. The dearest one may become a stranger or even an enemy. Wherever there is meeting, there is parting. All human relationships are transient. Mental afflictions are bound to arise in this person as they do in ourselves and pretty much everyone else. They come and go, behavior comes and goes. But once again, ever so importantly, there is the constant. This person, like the neutral person, like ourselves, constantly wishes for happiness, wishes to be free of suffering, and is following his or her own vision with hope and fear of failure. This person so much like ourselves. With each out-breath, breathe out the light of loving kindness. May you, like myself, find the happiness you seek. With each in-breath, arouse the heart of compassion. May you be free of suffering and the causes of suffering, like myself. Breathe out the light of loving kindness. Breathe in and dissolve the darkness of this person's suffering and whatever inner causes there are of such suffering. Now finally bring to mind a person for whom you feel aversion. If you never saw this person again, this person moved far away, it might give you a sense of relief. Whereas encountering this person or even thinking about this person may give some sense of discomfort, an uneasiness or distaste. Bring this person too vividly to mind. Bring to mind this person's behavior, this person's qualities that you find so distasteful. Allow that aversion to arise. The behavior we're attending to, the mental afflictions we bring to mind, may indeed be real. Perhaps this person is indeed so heavily afflicted and so deeply habituated to harmful behavior. It may well be true. But none of this behavior or mental afflictions lie at this person's core. None of us are distorted to the core. All of us have the potential to be free, and all of us are in a state of flux. Behaviors come and go, mental afflictions come and go. Virtues arise on occasion. This relationship will certainly change. No one stays an enemy forever. No one was always our enemy. Of this we can be certain. Over the course of time, this person may well become a stranger, could even become a dear friend. But again, there is the constant. This person, for whatever burden this person may bear in terms of mental afflictions, harmful behavior, in the midst of all of that, this person, like ourselves, wishes to be free of suffering, wishes for happiness, and is, like ourselves, essentially worthy of finding such freedom and such joy. As you breathe in, arouse this heart of compassion. May you be free. Be free of harmful behavior, free of the afflictions of your own mind that often bring harm to those around you, but first of all bring harm to you. Breathe in the darkness of this person's burdens and dissolve them without trace in your heart. With each in-breath, imagine this person becoming free and free and free. Finding serenity and peace, calm and balance, equanimity. With each in-breath, arouse this yearning. May you find peace of mind, peace of behavior. Imagine this person being free of all such burden, free of all of the traits that we found so disagreeable. Shuck them off like an old dry skin. And born anew. And then with each out-breath, breathe out this light of loving kindness. May you, like myself, find the happiness that is your heart's desire. Genuine happiness, fulfillment, a deeper sense of meaning. Breathe out this light of loving kindness.
Thank you, everyone. I think, Clara, feel free to share your screen again.
Great. So let's now explore how that landed for you, how that felt, and anything you want to share about it. I just have 3 prompts here, 3 questions, just to start the conversation, but you can comment on anything you'd like to comment on here. So the first one is just, how easy was it to practice impartiality in this practice? The second question, do you experience any resistance to cultivating impartiality? Anything that you notice that might be difficult about it for you? And the third question is, in which area of your life or in society at large do you see the biggest potential for cultivating impartiality? So these are just 3 questions, but I invite you all to share anything that came up for you, anything that you would like to share. It doesn't have to be to pertain to this practice right now, but it could be something that you practice on your own, from your own experience. So please do unmute yourselves and share what you'd like to share. You can also put it in the chat if you like, if you prefer, and I'll try to address what you say. Any thoughts, reflections you'd like to? Hi, I'm just trying to see everyone.
Hi, Sati. Yes, feel free to speak.
Oh, hi. Yeah. Well, to answer the first question, I think in a guided meditation, as we've just done, then I can go with the words of wisdom of Lama Allen, and I found it very helpful. But in day-to-day life, because of our, unconscious biases, it's very tricky, isn't it, when you have years of relationships with people, that there is a tendency to, feel more towards certain people than others. And yeah, I think it's really difficult, and I would like to cultivate this more, but I'm not going to deny that I think in day-to-day life it would require quite a conscious effort to enable the change to happen, in particular with people that you're closest to.
Yes, I hear what you're saying, and I can very much relate to to what you're saying. It's different doing it on the cushion, as it were, and doing it off the cushion. And also because of our conditioning and our relationships that we've been having for years, and it's difficult to shift that sometimes. And what you're saying about the loved ones or the people you're close to, do you want to say anything more about that?
Well, for example, I may feel more of an affinity with people who are in my family, kind of where we share similar personality traits, for example, and yet in other families, like your in-laws or whatever you want to call it, beautiful people, but just different. So you rather than embracing the difference, subconsciously there's a sense of, I don't want to say aversion, sounds really strong, but I guess there's a little bit of that.
Yeah. Well, thanks for sharing that, because and you know, it takes some practice also to notice that. I think we don't naturally notice that, and I think the more we practice these practices, we can become much more sensitive and much more self-aware about that, which I think is already a pretty good sign of progress, right? Because I think most people have those unconscious biases without being at all aware of that, and also thinking that that's just normal. That's, of course, that's how we are, right? And we can't change it. But just being aware of it, I think, is already pretty good. So, you know, it is a sign of progress to notice that. Yeah, so thanks for sharing that. Thank you. And of course, there is that, you know, I also, just from my perspective, you know, just the people we're closest to, there is that attachment as well, isn't there? And that's sometimes, you know, when we practice impartiality, it's about taking that attachment out and leaving the caring, rather than thinking of it as we mustn't care so much about our loved ones. That's not what it's about. It's about taking the attachment out without losing the sense of caring. And so that's tricky. You know, I have 2 kids, and, you know, that's my practice on that front, you know. So just to share that. But thank you, Sati, for that. Thank you.
I see John. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Jody.
Oh, John raised his hand.
Yes.
We see you, John.
Good morning.
Hi, John.
Hi, John.
Hi. I think that the thing I've been struggling with as I practice more and more meditation and observing my mind, you know, before practicing, I think I was indifferent to a lot of my negative thoughts, like, oh, ignore that, or ignore that, or ignore that. And now with training, I'm really cultivating the idea of, no, don't ignore what's going on in your mind. Don't be indifferent to it. Be present and aware of it. And then as I've been more aware, I notice greater reactivity. Oh, I like that thought. Oh, I don't like that thought. Oh, why am I having that thought again? I don't want to be having that thought again. And that's been tough to really develop the equanimity toward myself, because I think I still have this expectation that as I progress spiritually, I shouldn't be having those unpleasant thoughts, you know, that why are they bothering me still? And then I just have to accept that, yeah, that's part of the path, is it takes a lot of equanimity. So I think as much as I can, I've just been practicing compassion to myself. Sometimes that works, and sometimes it just doesn't seem to be quite enough. Sometimes some Tong Lin I use for myself. I guess I just keep coming back to the idea of just some humility, like, yeah, my mind's probably going to be generating these thoughts for quite a while, so why can't I just observe them and just say, well, there they come, let them go, and release the pleasant, unpleasant, the aversion to it. Because I was reading what Lama Allen was saying, that that's a type of craving. I'm craving to get rid of unpleasant experiences. And that traps you in delusion. you can't get, or get trapped in the pleasant ones. Either way, you're trapped. I'm trapped. So it's been quite a practice. So I just wanted to share that, Claire.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that, John. And yeah, I can relate. I think we probably all can relate to that. But and I think it's wonderful what you're doing in terms of practicing self-compassion. I think that's a really lovely antidote and really sort of from the heart, which is really, really valuable and really, I think it works. I mean, maybe it's nothing's a magic pill, right? But we practice and slowly, gradually, as you say, these are things that we will be struggling with for a while, but at least, becoming aware of it and knowing what to do to counteract it is really valuable already, really. And of course, the other side of the path would be to really get to bring the wisdom in and kind of, what's the nature of thoughts, and they're not really, they appear but they're not really there, and that other side as well would help. But I think from the sort of heart, from the method side of the practice, self-compassion is a wonderful thing to do for that. Yeah, wonderful. Thank you for sharing that. Anyone else who'd like to share? Andre,
yes.
hi. Hi.
Hello. Yeah, Clara, if you can talk more about the difference between affective empathy and cognitive empathy, how to not mistake one for the other, and how to realize if you're trapped in cognitive empathy, and how to get out of the trap and develop more affective empathy.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I'd like to say that it's not, I wouldn't look at it so negatively in terms of being trapped in cognitive empathy, because cognitive empathy is really valuable, and I think we need to have that. It's just a different feeling tone. It's a different type of empathy, but it's really, really important to have that. And we need it in our daily lives. We need it when we try to understand something. We read about people suffering and maybe we don't know them, and we can't experience that affective empathy, but we understand on a cognitive level and experience empathy on that level, and that's also very valuable, as long as we can also experience and practice effective empathy. So don't think of it as a negative. I think it's a really important skill and a quality that we all have and we all need to cultivate, so that we can understand, even in a sort of very dry everyday context, in a business meeting or whatever, we need to understand where the other person is coming from, just with using our rational mind. It's not always necessary to cultivate that affective side. But in terms of cultivating effective empathy, well, the practice we just did, for example, that's really cultivating it from the bottom up. It's really from that sense of caring, I think, is absolutely vital. And Lama Allen often mentions that the sense of caring is our most fundamental, quoting His Holiness the Dalai Lama, the sense of caring is our most fundamental impulse. So really tapping into that and tapping into that insight, that truth, that everyone wants to be free of suffering, everyone wants to be happy. And if we tap into that and allow that sense of caring to arise, that's, I think, what the practice is about, and that will cultivate the affective side of empathy. That's what I would say here. So I hope that's helpful.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you, Andre. Anyone else who would like to share?
Clara, there's a nice, beautiful quote from Liz Gill. She wrote in the chat, just to follow up on what you just said. I can read it.
Yes, please. Yes.
Liz said, "I like to think of equanimity as believing in the equality of all that lives."
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Liz, for sharing that. That's wonderful. Yeah. That's it, really. Yeah. Thank you.
And Griffin Cunningham has a really nice question in the chat as well. He says, "This might be going beyond the scope of what we're talking about today, but I would love to hear more about maintaining equanimity while holding others accountable for harmful actions, such as hurtful comments in the workplace based on gender, race, etc. I totally agree that equanimity needs to play a central role in the workplace, and holding each other accountable is necessarily a part of that, but it feels hard to do that with equanimity in real life.
Yeah, that's such an insightful question, and something that is really important. I think there's, to disentangle. So I think we need to kind of disentangle. I mean, that's really the word for me, that, disentangle that sense of, when we are equanimous, that misconception that if we cultivate a sense of caring, or we are equanimous, we are cultivating impartiality, that anything goes. That's not the case. It's really, what we're trying to do is taking out the attachment and the aversion, which are these mental afflictions that distort our mind and that distort our perception of reality. So take that out of the equation, but leave the caring. It's really taking that apart. So the caring should always be there. That's what we're practicing. But that doesn't mean that we can't point out other people's, if they behave in an inappropriate way in any way. I think we could still say that, but without that aversion and attachment. I think if we manage to disentangle these things, and I think that's the practice, that's the challenge, I think, that we have, because it's difficult to disentangle it. I mean, it goes against all our conditioning, that if someone does something wrong or treats us badly, then there will be aversion. And that's such an ingrained kind of pattern. It's our conditioning. And I've heard neuroscientists say it's hardwired in our brain for evolutionary purposes. And my sort of, I just don't... From a spiritual perspective, I just think, well, it's because they don't know how to practice it. But that's what we're doing here. We're practicing these practices from the inside out, from the bottom up. We're practicing it from the heart, from that sense of caring. We have a method on how to counteract these biases, these mental poisons, these mental afflictions. And so that's what it's all about. And that we can still, point out injustices. We can still, speak out and say that things are wrong, or things are, you can't behave in that way, and have healthy boundaries, but without that contamination from our mental afflictions, from that bias, still wishing the other person well. So I think that's the challenge. I mean, it sounds easier when I say it like that. That's the challenge, and that's what we're practicing. I think that's exactly what it's all about in the end. So I hope it was a bit helpful, but yeah, it's not an easy thing to accomplish, of course.
May I say something?
Yeah, sure, David. Yeah, I think you were, and then Ted. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Oh, sorry, I can't tell who's waiting. Yeah. I don't know if others experience this, but when I do this work and listen to Lama Allen's meditation, I always have difficulty selecting the people for the categories. And then as I select them, I find them slipping out of those categories moment to moment. Like the neutral one, I'll start realizing there's things I like, and I sort of move back, and how do I actually have to force myself to maintain that sense of neutrality, and the loved one, I become neutral towards as I'm bringing them to mind. So this, what Lama Allen mentions, that this is all transient. Like these qualities come and go all the time. And this meditation, I find, really brings that out. It's very interesting. I just can't keep people in the categories as I do it. So it's kind of, I think, probably helpful to realize that that's coming and going all the time.
Thanks, David. That's a wonderful observation, actually, and it's exactly, it sounds like the practice is really working for you, because that's exactly what Lama Allen also says, right? It's that it's also contextual, and it's not cast in stone who's in which category, and the fact that they're slipping for you actually shows that you're dissolving the boundaries. And understanding that it's in a way often circumstantial who's in which category, and even loved ones can be in the enemy category sometimes, when we're challenged by them in some way, or we are having an argument. I mean, that's definitely happened to me as well. And then the other way around as well, you know, and we all have friends who we've lost touch with or don't like so much anymore, don't feel that affinity, and other people that have turned from strangers into friends and all that stuff. So it's, yeah, it sounds like it's working well for you. So thank you for sharing that. That's wonderful. Thank you. And Ted. And so I'm aware of time, so I don't want to go too long,
very short,
over the hour, but I definitely want to take your question, Ted.
45 seconds.
No, sure.
Okay. How to practice impartiality when you're witnessing something that is unfair, a relative level, right? I mean, something that is totally like a man hitting or punching a woman. I saw it recently. Well, that's relative impartiality. I should have kept quiet. I came in defense. I got punched in the face when I said to the guy, hey, don't hit the woman. I mean, that's so relative, so mundane. I mean, sorry for bringing her down from the heights. We're absolute impartiality, but in practical impartiality every day, when you see it, you see things unfair or not really just. I mean, you feel like saying something, like acting, you know, not like a vigilante or anything like that, but just doing something. And I know that's a brother of mine, the guy who's punching the sister, but I can't just say, okay, cool, beat the hell out of her, you know, I don't care. No, I mean, I feel I have to get involved. And I got punched in the face because I got involved, but at least, you know, he stopped punching the lady.
Well, thank you so much for sharing that. I think that's such an important point that you're bringing up, and I hope you're okay having been punched. I hope everything is kind of, you didn't get any damage from that. So good. So I'm really glad you brought that up, because this is really important to point out that it's not about not saying anything. That's not what we're doing here. So of course you should intervene, you should stop the situation and do whatever you can to stop what's the harm that's been afflicted. So absolutely. And so in actions, in deeds, and in words, anything you can do is welcome. But what I think is important to do is really to, again, this disentangling of the action and the person. So the action may be wrong, is definitely wrong in this case. So we need to condemn the action. We need to point it out. We need to speak out. We need to act to the best of our abilities to stop that. And it's all what we turn against is the harmful act, but the person is still worthy of being happy, finding the causes of happiness, which they clearly haven't if they're beating other people up, and being free of suffering, which again, they're not free of, because that's why they're acting in that way. So wishing them well, wishing them to be free of suffering is actually a way of wishing them to not act in that way in the future. So can we at the same time step in and do what needs to be done in that sort of fierce compassion kind of way, do what you've done, but at the same time, you know, go home and then wish them well impartially, because if they were better in their minds, if they were free of mental afflictions like aversion and attachment, then they wouldn't act in that way. Do you see? So disentangling these two things, I think, is really important. And we need to do both, I think, if we want to practice this. We still need to act as we, you know, for the greater benefit of all. And we, at the same time, we can still practice compassion without, and impartiality, loving kindness, all of the four measurables. So that's really the task at hand.
Thank you.
Yeah. So thank you so much for bringing that up, because that's such an important point. Mm-hmm. So I don't want to take up too much of your time. I'm happy to stay behind if anyone wants to ask further questions, but if you need to go, and yeah, so I want to say thank you for coming. hope it was helpful, it was interesting, and I hope to see you at one of the next sessions. And yeah, Courtney, did you want to say anything else?
Sure. Yeah. Well, thank you everyone for joining. There's really an integrity and a container to practicing together, even if we're spread all over the world. And thank you for your support of the CCR. If you feel moved to contribute, you can do so on our website or through our emails. But really, you know, the best gift you can give to anyone is continuing to cultivate impartiality in your practice and, you know, doing your practice. Hopefully this is a inspiration to try out some of these techniques consistently. And so thank you, Clara, for your beautiful guidance today. We are about to announce a concert actually in Crestone. Announcement hasn't gone out yet, but just a little bit of a preview. We have a well-known Tibetan flute player who's going to be performing September 23rd in Crestone along with a Dharma talk. So stay tuned for more information about that. And we hope to be able to live stream that as well. His name is Nawang Ketchag, and we'll send out more information. But thank you again, everyone, for joining today. It's lovely to see you all.
Bye.
And see you next time.
Thank you. Thank you, Terry.
Thank you very much.